Shalom, shalom, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to come to United States, first of all. Victory Church was the first one. Sonia, come to us. That was it. So that's why I'm here, actually, because Victory Church have asked me to come. So thank you very much, guys, for inviting me. It's a real joy to be with you and to get to know some of you. I can't know everybody, but get to know some of you. I'd like to start with a prayer. First of all, I've been asked to give my testimony as well, how I came to know the Lord. And after that, I will do the teachings that I prepared for you, okay? So we're going to pray. I don't pray in English. I pray in Hebrew. So I apologize. It doesn't come out in English. I'll do it in Hebrew, okay? אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק, אלוהי יעקב, אנו מודים לך, אבא, מברכים אותך. אנחנו מבקשים, אבא, שרוח קודשך יבוא אלינו, תהיה איתנו, תברך אותנו, בשם ישוע המשיח. Amen. Okay, so a little bit about how I came to the Lord. It wasn't easy for me. I'm a Jewish girl, come from Jewish family, and I was born in Israel and grew up in Argentina. This is why I speak Spanish. And when I was 2.5, I was born in Israel, I was 2.5, my parents actually went to Argentina. So I grew up in Argentina. I did my primary and secondary school in Argentina. And I finished before my contemporaries. I finished my secondary school at 17 years old. And in those days, when dinosaurs ruled the earth, in those days, you couldn't go to university until you were 18 years old. So I kind of had a gap year, and I was helping my parents during that gap year in their shop. And during that time, a Christian will turn up every time I was in that shop, every afternoon. When my parents actually went for the siesta, I was at the shop. And this Christian will come in, and he will tell me all about the Bible, okay? And this guy talked a lot. In fact, he talked too much. And I thought, I was actually mocking him and asking him many questions, and he would not stop talking. And I thought that was extremely funny, And what I was asking him was about the Bible, questions about the Bible. And he says to me, I was 17 years old then, he said to me, how can it be that you do not know anything about the Bible? This is shameful, he said to me. This book is a Jewish book. And how is it that you don't know this Jewish book, And he got me my first Bible in Spanish. I read it from the front to the back, from Genesis to Revelation in 3 months. Okay, I read it like a book, the whole thing. And I didn't know this God, the God of Israel. I did not know him. And I asked him a very dangerous question. If you're there and your son is Jesus, show me, okay? Because, I didn't know that as a good Jewish girl, I shouldn't be reading the New Testament. Too late. Way too late, okay? And the Lord showed me miracles after miracles after miracles after miracles. I could not deny that the God of Israel was alive and kicking, and that Yeshua, Jesus, was his son. Okay? And I had a terrible time, let me tell you. My parents opposed me from the very beginning. At the beginning, I started keeping Shabbat holy, the Sabbath day holy. Okay? For the Jewish people, it's Friday night to Saturday night. And my parents being secular, Jewish secular, they couldn't care less about keeping the Sabbath holy, okay? And what I did is I said to my parents, I'm not going to go to the shop on the Sabbath. And you know, this is a very Jewish thing to do, right? That's what the Bible is asking, to rest one day. And I said to them, I'm not going to go on the Sabbath day to the shop, and I'm going to cook Friday night for Saturday, okay? And the Saturday came. My parents actually were very annoyed, demonically annoyed, to the fact that I was keeping the Sabbath. They did not like that at all. And when I actually got the food out of the fridge and put it in front of them, they said to me, we do not eat food that was made the day before. Maybe that was the case in those days. And they throw the whole thing to the dog. Now, you know, in Argentina at the time, the people starving. People need food. You know, I said to my parents, please don't throw it away. Give it to our neighbors. Who's going to eat this? They throw the whole thing. And I remember reading in the Bible the day before that the vengeance is of the Lord. And believe me, I did not know where I was praying, because I said to the Lord, I'm not going to get annoyed about this, but the vengeance is yours. I did not know what I was praying, because the next Saturday, a wind go inside my father's shop, started to go around, lift the roof up, slam the roof down exactly in the same place so that nothing happened to my parents who were inside and other people were inside, but the roof was broken. The windows were broken, the doors were broken. My father had to work 48 hours just to close that shop. Not to repair it, just to close it. He couldn't close it. And then I thought, oh my God, what have I found? What have I touched? And I dare not tell my father what I prayed. Can you imagine that? Yeah? And I started escaping to the church. And every time I come back, they will beat me up because they didn't like the fact that their daughter believed in Jesus. Okay? And I will be beaten up. I was black and blue. Talk about abuse, terrible abuse. Okay? And one day I thought I better don't go back inside the house because they're going to get me. And I went outside. It was a winter day. It was drizzling. It was dark outside. The clouds were very thick. And I much better be in the patio than go inside the house. My mother came out, started hitting me. My big brother came out, started hitting me. You can see how violent family I had. And my brother came home, and then he heard that I went to church, and then I was sitting on the patio, so he was kicking me while I was sitting on the patio. I was crying, as you can imagine, and it just crossed my head that it would be nice if the sun would come out and warm me up. In that split of the second, the sun was on me. And I look up, and what I saw is that the clouds separated into stripes like soldiers, literally one after the other, and it went with the wind in the sun that would come down and warm me up. It was incredible. I looked up, I laughed, because I couldn't believe it. And, you know, it didn't matter what my parents were doing to me, the Lord was stronger. Miracles after miracles after miracles. After 6 months of actually being beaten up, I said to the Lord, I had enough of all this beating. Can you believe that? Yeah, I had enough of all this. And the Lord said to me a truth that will be with me for the rest of my life. He said to me, they might be able to hit you, yeah? They might be able to really bruise you, but nobody can touch what's inside of you. Nobody can touch your spirit. You can actually believe whatever you like. They cannot touch that. Isn't that amazing? Isn't God amazing? And he gave me such strength. So many miracles happened that I could not deny that the God of Israel was the God of Israel. And that he's still there. And what do my parents do? They kicked me out of the house. I was 18 years old. They sent me to Israel, thinking that if I'm in Israel, I'll forget all about Yeshua. Now, how about that? Yeah, they sent me to the promised land, to the land that Yeshua walked, yeah, and they think that I'll forget all about him. Isn't that amazing? Isn't God amazing? Yeah? And from that moment on, my father and my mother and my brothers and my sisters has been the Lord. And from that moment onwards, he have educated me. He have taken me from one university to another. He have paid all the way. And believe you me, he's better than any other family that I had in this land. This is our God. You don't mess around with him. Amen? Amen. Okay, so we are going to start with the lessons. And they asked me to give you a little bit of what it's like actually to be in Israel. Okay, some of the lessons that I do in Israel. And one of them is about the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we're going to start with the Dead Sea Scrolls. You are going to get the PowerPoint afterwards, so, it's easier for you. So if you can come, please, here it is, okay, the Dead Sea Scrolls. We are going to look at, please, next one. We're going to look at regarding the community at Qumran. We're going to talk about this community, the Essene community. We're going to talk about who they are, yeah? This is actually a denomination. The Essenes are a denomination in Judaism that they were at the same time as the Sadducees and the Pharisees, yeah? We know the Sadducees and the Pharisees because they're mentioned in the New Testament, yeah? But this is a little community that at the time of Yeshua or Jesus, was no more than maybe 1,000 of them, okay? But nevertheless, still a denomination from the Second Temple period, okay? And these people were actually in the desert. They separated themselves from life. They were monks, Jewish monks, before the Christian monks came about, okay? These were mainly men. 95% of them were men, and they separated themselves from life. Why? Why did they do that? Because, the Jewish people are very family-oriented people. They're people that love the Jewish festivities, everything to do in the Bible is about family, yeah? And here these men actually decide to abandon their families and go to the desert. Why do they do that? Okay? And we are going to look at what they did, why did they do that, how they lived in the desert, and so on. Okay? And we're going to look at what they left behind. Because these guys were copying the Bible by hand. Yeah? This is 2,000 years ago. There was no printing press in those days. And they were doing it by hands. So we're going to see, how is it that these documents survive for 2,000 years? Yeah, these documents are actually made out of leather. Now, if you have a leather shoe, how long does the leather shoe last? Can anybody tell me? Yeah? Maximum 10 years, and it's not going to be in good condition after 10 years, right? This document lasted for 2,250 years. How is it? How is it that they were preserved? Yeah? And that's what we are going to look at. The miracles that actually are associated with the finding of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, next one, please. Okay, forget it. Never mind. Okay, so next one then. The community at Qumran then is called the Essenes. The Essenes, they did not call themselves Essenes. They called themselves Yahad. Say it with me. Yahad, right? If you're about to spit, you've done it right, okay? Yahad. All right. So what does it mean, Yahad? Togetherness. They were together in the desert, okay? They abandoned their families and friends. They separated themselves. They became the Jewish monks. They were waiting in the desert for the Messiah. Now, in Jewish understanding of Messiah, is not the same understanding that Christianity have of Messiah. Christianity believes in this mighty Messiah that came to save the world, right? Which is absolutely true. In Jewish understanding of a Messiah, is an anointed king who comes to save the Jewish people from some kind of oppression. Okay? So in this case, the Essene community were waiting for the Messiah. Why? Because during that time, when they went to the desert, it was 250 BC, was actually during the Hellenistic period. The Hellenists were doing disastrous things in Israel. Were forbidding the Jewish people from circumcising their children. They're forbidding the Jewish people from being Jews. They forbid the Jewish people from keeping the Sabbath. They forbid the Jewish people from the festivals, from the Jewish festivals. They took hold of the temple where they were sacrificing pigs in the temple. They put idols, Hellenistic idols, inside the temple, yeah? Disastrous what the Hellenists were doing. And therefore, these people decide to abandon what was going on in Jerusalem, what was going on where the Hellenists were actually controlling, and they left to the desert. And they left in 250 BC. Next one, please, okay? Now, you can actually see the Hellenistic period. Alexander the Great actually came in 332 BC, okay? And by 250 BC, already the Essene community leaves Jerusalem. It's fascinating because the Hellenists were causing so much havoc within Jerusalem that a huge Jewish community left for Alexandria in Egypt, okay, during the Hellenistic period. We have, according to Josephus, 2 million Jews in Alexandria during the Hellenistic period. Yeah, they escaped the Hellenists. And isn't it fascinating when Yeshua actually is born and they have to run away, where do they go? They go to Egypt. Probably to Alexandria, where that huge Jewish community was in Egypt, okay? So the Hellenists then did havoc in Israel, and this is why the Maccabees, or the Hasmoneans, who is a Jewish kingdom, they kicked out the Hellenists out of the land, and they start ruling in the land from 167 BC until 63 BC, that starts the Roman period. Okay, is that clear? All right? Very good. Now, the Essene community then lasted from 250 BC, Hellenistic period, to 68 AD. That is actually during the Roman period. Okay? Is that clear? Okay, next one, please. Now, what were the Maccabees doing? And you need to read this to understand. Okay, we're going to go bit by bit, and I'm going to explain it in detail. So first of all, this actually comes from 1 Maccabees 1:44 to 50. This is actually a Jewish book. It was written by the Maccabees, so the Hasmoneans, who's Jewish people, okay? And this is what the Hellenists were doing. Look what they were doing, okay? The king, it doesn't tell you, but it's actually Antiochus Epiphanes IV, okay? The king also sent messengers with a decree to Jerusalem and all the towns of Judea, ordering the people to follow customs that were foreign to the country. Yeah? The Hellenists were forcing the Jews to abandon Judaism and forcing them and Hellenizing the country, bringing idolatry into the land, okay? And then he says he ordered them not to offer burnt offering, grain offering, or wine offering in the temple, yeah? So what do the Hellenists want? That they abandon the Mosaic law. That's what they wanted. Okay? And commanded them to treat the Sabbath and festival as ordinary work days. So you can actually see the Hellenists did not understand what's all this issue of not working one day a week. This is insane. In those days, 200 BC, 300 BC, you worked until you die. You worked every single day of your life until you die. For them, the Jewish people were lazy. How is it that they don't work one day a week? Okay? It was a foreign idea to them. And this is why they were forbidding the Jewish people from keeping the Sabbath and Jewish festivals as well, okay? And then he says, they were even ordered to defile the temple and the holy things in it. Terrible. What do the Hellenists do? They bring their own gods. They said, how is it these people only worship one God? Are you nuts? There's so many. Yeah? And they couldn't believe it. Yeah? So they brought in their own gods. You can worship your God as well as my God and the other gods. Yeah? All the gods all together. And on top of that, they're sacrificing pigs in the temple. Oi, 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 oi. Okay? All right. And then he says, yeah, they were commanded to build pagan altars. Look at this. Okay? Temples and shrines. Those that were with me in Israel, do you remember Banyas? Yeah, or Patnias, yeah, which eventually became Caesarea Philippi, the gate of hell. Okay, that's actually a pagan, Hellenistic altar in the Promised Land. Okay, they were doing disastrous things in the Promised Land. Okay, it says they were commanded to build pagan altars, temples, and shrines, and to sacrifice pigs and other unclean animal there. Okay, terrible things they were doing. They were forbidden to circumcise their sons. For the Hellenists, the circumcision was a mutilation of the body. Oi, 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 what are you doing? Yeah, terrible. Cutting a person? No way, Jose, okay? They couldn't understand the Jewish way of thinking at all, okay? They were forbidden to circumcise their sons and required to make themselves ritually unclean in every way they could. This is why so many hundreds of thousands of Jews actually abandon the Promised Land and they go to Egypt, yeah? So that they would forget the law which the Lord has given through Moses and would disobey all his commands, yeah? If you did not do what the king of the Hellenists was saying, they will kill you, No questions asked, yeah? Look what it says. The penalty for disobeying the king's decree was death, okay? And I want to show you this. Next one, please. Okay? Now, corruption started in the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, okay? Now, to actually show you the difference, you should know that the high priest, the true high priest, was actually a lifelong commitment. It was something that they did for life. And there were 24 families of the Levites, descendants of Zadok, that could be the high priest, okay? They chose, and there was no financial exchange here whatsoever, yeah? This is actually a godly appointment, yeah, that these families, 24 families, these guys passed to be the Sadducees, okay? Descendants of Zadok, the priest, okay? Now, what was happening at the time of the Hellenists, look what was happening, okay? 2 Maccabees 4, 7b to 8, where it says, Jason, the brother of Onias, obtained the high priesthood by corruption, promising the king with an interview 360 talents of silver, and from another source of revenue, 80 talents. That means that the Hellenists said like this, the high priesthood is too much of an important job for the Jewish people to decide who's going to be the high priest. So they started deciding who was going to be the high priest, and at the highest bidding. That means you have to pay to the Hellenists to get the privilege of being the high priest. Okay? Oi, 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 oi. Can you see this? And on top of that, you have to be pro-Hellenist. You have to accept what the Hellenists are saying. Oy vey, yeah? These idolatrous people. I won't say something else. Okay. You see what's going on here? You see why the Essenes decide to leave the country? Okay, to go to the desert, to stay away from this Hellenist. Okay, next one, please. Now, this is the list of all the high priests that you had during the Hellenistic period. I have put it there. You see where the information is coming from. So if you like to study more about it, you can actually go for the references, okay? So this is Ptolemy, okay, of Egypt. This is the first ruler, if you like, during the Hellenistic period, okay? And look at this, okay? So this is Eleazar, son of Onias. This is the guy that produced the Septuagint. And look how long did he rule? 15 years. Remember that the high priesthood is for life, not just for a few years, okay? So you can actually see that the Hellenists are changing the high priest between 5 to 15 years, okay? Depending if the high priest actually obeys what the Hellenists are saying or not, okay? And you're going to see more, okay? Look at this guy, Manasseh, son of Judah, 5 years as high priest, okay? This Simon, 20 years as high priest, that's quite a lot. This Onias is 5 years a high priest. Look at Jason, 3 years a high priest. Next one, please. Okay, and look at this one. Onias the fourth, who also was a high priest, he had to flee to Egypt because they were going to murder him. Can you see that? Okay. And look at this, Alcimus, he was called by Antiochus Epiphanes IV. That was the king of the Hellenists at the time. Yeah, why did they kill him? Because they were not put up with the Hellenist ways. Yeah? And then Jonathan was the one that started the Maccabean dynasty, and he kicked out the Hellenists altogether. Okay? Because of the disastrous things they were doing in the land of Israel. And this is fascinating. If you ever read the book of Daniel, Daniel actually prophesied the Greeks, the Hellenists, coming into the land and that they were going to be delivered. Okay? And it's the Maccabees actually who delivered them. Okay? Okay. Next one, please. Okay? So the Essene community then decides to live in the desert and wait for the Messiah. Okay? The Essenes believe in the imminent return of the Messiah, an anointed king that would deliver them from the Hellenists. Now, this Jewish idea of Messiah, of a deliverer that come to deliver the Jewish people, is something that was prevalent at the time of Jesus as well, at the time of Yeshua, during the Roman period. How do I know this? Because remember when Yeshua comes into Jerusalem and the people are shouting at him and saying, Hosanna, Hosanna, son of David. Do you remember that? Okay? What they were saying, in fact, is Hosanna, this is Hebrew, Hosanna, son of David. What they were saying to him is, save us, son of David. Save us from what? Save us from the Romans. Yeah? So the fact that they were saying to him, son of David, means that they believed that he was the Messiah, but the purpose of Messiah in Jewish understanding was to deliver the Jewish people from some kind of oppression. Yeah? This is why the disciples did not understand the kind of Messiah Yeshua was. He had to come back for 40 days and 40 nights to explain what was written about him after his death and resurrection, yeah? To explain what was written about him because they didn't understand the kind of Messiah he was. Yeah? They thought that Yeshua was going to deliver them from the Romans, and he did not come to do that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay? Very good. Next one, please. Okay, so what did the Qumranic community did? They lived at Qumran. They were copying the scrolls, okay? They copied the scrolls by hand. And believe me, it's a big job. There was no printing press over there. Now, let me tell you that one book, the book of Isaiah, it will take a person to copy 1 year. 1 year just for one book, okay? Meticulously, word for word, okay? And if they made a mistake, they will actually rewrite it. They will take that section out and rewrite it. They will not allow themselves to make any mistakes. And this is fascinating, right? They were cultivating in the desert. They were planting palm trees. It's palm trees, but it's not coconut trees, like you generally know the palm trees as, but it's date palm trees. Date palm trees. And they were making honey. When the Bible tells us that the land of Israel is actually the land of milk and honey, it's actually not bee honey, but date honey. They're making honey out of dates, okay? And the Essene communities were making date honey. And what's fascinating about this is when you go to Qumran, the archaeologists found thousands and thousands of pips. And they decided to plant some of them to see which kind of, this is thousands of years old pips, okay? And they planted them and added a few things into the ground so that maybe they germinate, okay? And one of them germinated, a male palm tree, and we call him Methuselah. Because, this is an old guy. Okay? And then they said, well, we need the female palm tree as well. Okay? We cannot just have the male palm tree. We need the female palm tree to see which kind of dates they had. And they planted more seeds, and 3 female palm trees were born. They called them Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah, okay? And now, today, we have the kind of dates that they had 2,000 years ago. Isn't that fascinating, okay? Anyway, so that's what the Essene community was doing in the desert. But the principal job was actually copying the scriptures, okay? Next one, please. Okay, so what happened was, in 68 AD, the Romans come to destroy the Qumranic community, but before they could actually destroy that place, the Essene community hid the scrolls in the caves. You can actually see all the caves surrounding the area in the desert next to the Dead Sea. And they hid the scrolls in the cave. The Romans came in 68 AD, and they killed every single one of them. That means that the knowledge that those scrolls were there was lost in time. The Romans were not interested in the scrolls, yeah? Only the Jewish people were interested in the scrolls. And therefore, it was lost in time. And it still stayed hidden for 2,000 years. And look at this. The Jewish people lost it in 68 AD. And it wasn't until the Jewish people are back in the land 2,000 years later that these scrolls appear again. It's like the Lord will not trust anybody else with his word. Can you see this? Can you see how miraculous this is? Isn't that incredible? Yeah? And so these people, the Essene community, hid them in the caves, and they were lost in time. Okay, next one, please. And then the Qumran was destroyed. The community was destroyed in 68 AD by the Romans. Next one, please. And then 2 Bedouins, 2 desert people, in 1947, they lost a sheep and went looking for that sheep, and they found some scrolls. Now, this is fascinating because this is so biblical, right? Because Moses lost a sheep, and he found who? Found the God of Israel, okay, in this burning bush, right? And then Yeshua said, if you lose a sheep, you leave the 99 and go looking for the one you lost, right? That's exactly what these guys did. Can you see that? Okay? They went looking for the sheep. They see a cave, one of the caves in the desert. They couldn't quite reach it, and they threw a stone inside the cave, thinking that if there is a sheep inside, it will come running out, okay? But what's happened is the sheep was not inside. They hear a crack. And then they go and investigate. One of the jars was broken inside. They go and investigate, and they see 3 scrolls. These guys do not know how to read Hebrew. These are Arab, Muslim, Bedouin, desert people. Most of them, they are completely analphabet, okay? They don't know how to read and write or whatever. And they see that this is leather. So what do? They go to a sandalier to sell this for leather. And the sandalier said to him, are you nuts? These are ancient documents. Go to an art dealer and you get more money for it. So in 1947, they go to an art dealer and they get for 3 scrolls of the Dead Sea $100. And they thought that they made big business. Can you believe this? Okay? And then the scrolls, these 3 scrolls in 1947, they went from hand to hand to hand to hand until it arrived in New York. Next one, please. Okay? They arrived in New York, and an advert in the New York Times, 1953, I believe, 3 scrolls of the Dead Sea for $250,000. They were selling them. Next one, please. Now, Igal Yadin, who was actually a professor of archaeology and also the head of the IDF in Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces, he goes to the Prime Minister of Israel and he says, this is David Ben-Gurion, he says, David, these are our scrolls. We need to bring them back home. And David Ben-Gurion said to him, are you nuts? Are you going to actually spend $250,000 to bring the scrolls? And we have to feed and house 500,000 Holocaust survivors. And you want to spend $250,000? Get lost. He actually kicked him out of his office. Okay? And then Igal Yadin found a donor who gave him $250,000. He went all the way to New York and got those scrolls back home. And then he mapped out the Judean desert and all the holes that you can possibly imagine in it, and sent the Israeli army and sent students of archaeology to find more scrolls. And they found 13 different caves, all in the proximity of the community of Qumran, with more than 800 scrolls and hundreds of thousands of pieces. 800 scrolls. Can you imagine that? This is a library. They hid the library in the proximity. Next one, please. Okay? That happened between 1953 to 1956 that they actually managed to get the scrolls, 800 of them, okay? So then how did the scrolls survive? How is it? These are some of the scrolls are 2,250 years old. Yeah? How do they survive? And this is also miraculous. Yeah? The Essenes put the scrolls in jars. The jars actually kept them in darkness. Then they put them in the caves. The caves keep them refrigerated because they keep the same temperature. Doesn't matter what the temperature outside is. Yeah? And also the atmosphere of the Dead Sea, surrounding the Dead Sea, is actually a salty atmosphere. And salt is what? Can you see this? And therefore, these are the most ancient documents of the Bible on the face of the earth. Okay? Next one, please. Okay? Now, what do they found? What do they found? More than 800 scrolls. All of the books of Esther, all of the books of the Bible, including Esther. Now, we used to say that Esther was not found, and maybe why Esther is not found, and so on, but now they found it. It was in between another scroll. And we have several books of Esther within the scrolls, okay? And therefore they found it, because that means that all the books of the Old Testament are actually copied by the Essene community 2,000 years ago, okay? Isn't that fascinating? The Apocrypha, the Jewish Apocrypha, I don't know if you heard about them. Tobias, Judith, the Maccabees, yeah? The Wisdom of Solomon, so many historical books. And also, and this is absolutely fascinating, 26 books that were used as a reference for the Bible. Now, if you actually go to the book of Chronicles and you go to the book of Kings, you will see this king did this and that and the other. And if you would like to know more about this king, please go to this other book. It's actually giving you the reference. They have found 26 reference books of the Bible. Now you need to say, wow. Isn't that amazing? Okay? This is mind-blowing, guys. Mind-blowing. Okay? And also, it's mind-blowing the fact that before these scrolls were found, as historians, the only source of the Second Temple period really was Josephus. We have Philo as well, but it's not very detailed. Josephus was actually the most detailed of all the historical books. But now we have all the documents from the Essene community as well. The laws and regulations of the Essene community, what they believe was happening during the Second Temple period, Hellenistic time, and so on. You know, it opens up the Second Temple period even further. Okay, so this is absolutely fascinating. Okay, next one, please. So then, why are the scrolls actually important for us? Why? Because we have in Hebrew exactly what they had 2,250 years ago. The Jewish people, this Essene community, did such a great job. Look at this, you know, you deal with the word of God, and it's an eternal word. God actually makes sure that these documents actually survived. Can you see this? Isn't this amazing? We have the same thing. We can actually read what was written 2,250 years ago in Hebrew, and we have exactly the same today. Okay? Some of the differences that you might find within the scrolls is, for example, that 2,000 years ago, a particular word, you could spell it this way or you could spell it that way. 2,000 years later, we have a specific spelling now. But it doesn't make any difference whatsoever to what is actually written. Can you see this? Isn't this incredible? It actually shows you the veracity of Scripture. Shows you how amazingly well looked after this Scripture has been for thousands and thousands of years. This is the Word of God we're talking about. Amen? Amen. Okay? Now, before the scrolls were found, the oldest Bible that we had was 1,000 years old. Some of these documents are 2,250 years old. Okay? This is amazing, right? Incredible, incredible. And another thing that I wanted to tell you is regarding the Isaiah scroll. You should know that the Jewish people for thousands of years have said that Jesus fulfills so many prophecies of the Isaiah scroll that definitely must have been written by a Christian and after the events. This is what they said. But amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found 3 scrolls of Isaiah that predates Christianity by 250 years. Now they cannot say that the Isaiah scroll doesn't belong to us. Now you need to say, wow. Can you see what's going on here? Isn't that amazing? Okay. Anyway, next one, please. Next one. Where are the scrolls today? Now, this is, 800 scrolls. It's not more than 800 scrolls. It's a lot. And you need to have the space to actually keep them in darkness. You have to keep them at a certain temperature. So therefore, there's several universities and libraries that actually have them One of them is the Israel Museum that have part of it. And another one is the Rockefeller Museum, which is actually in Jerusalem. Do you know who Rockefeller is, right? Yeah, he actually gave the money to build this museum. That's why it's actually named after him. And also Cambridge University in England have some of them. So you see all the Israelis go to the university to actually work on them, yeah? Anyway, so that is it. Isn't this incredible? Yeah. So we're going to do question and answers, right? Yeah.
So for those of you guys, oh, there we go. For those of you guys who didn't see the QR code at the beginning, we're going to put that QR code back up. That is a way where you can submit questions. Now you can submit questions throughout the course of the event. So we're going to go ahead and answer a few questions on the first half of the event, and then we will do a second Q&A. So Michael, standing over here, if you have questions and you didn't have a chance to submit them, you can walk over to him and he will give you a chance to ask, but I am gonna go ahead and read a couple questions that we've already submitted. So one of the questions, Sonia, is in relation to the high priest, and they're asking for a little bit of clarity regarding the role and significance of the high priest. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yes. So for people that take note, this is a good time to take notes because it's not going to be on the PowerPoint. Okay, so the high priests then, they are the descendants of Zadok, the 24 families, descendants of Zadok. This is actually King David who started with this organization in preparation for the temple, yeah? David did not build the temple, but did make all the preparations for it. Got the land, got the wood from Lebanon, and so on. And he also sorts out what's going to be the high priesthood, okay? So the whole thing, the Sadducees actually, the sons of Zadok already start during the first temple period, okay? Solomon's temple, already that is set up. Now, what happened with the descendants of Zadok then during the second temple period is something else. The Jewish people actually come back from Babylon, 538 BC, and when they come back from Babylon, the Babylonian king said to the Jewish people, the Persian king said to the Jewish people at the time, you need to set up a government over the people. So during the Persian period, if you can actually put the Persian period, guys over there at the back, can you put the timeline, the Persian period, the Hellenistic period, the Roman period, yeah? So that they can actually see it. Thank you, there it is. Okay, so here is the Persian period in the land of Israel. The returnees of Babylon, they start returning to the land in 538 BC. When they returned to the land, the king of Persia at the time said to the Jewish people, said to the returnees of Babylon, he said to Ezra in particular, and this is actually in the book of Ezra, he says you need to set up a government on the land. So during the Persian period, the Jewish people were autonomous. They only paid tribute to Persia. Okay? So you're following me. During the Persian period then, the Sanhedrin is formed. This is the beginning of the Sanhedrin. Okay? Who was the head of the Sanhedrin? Was Ezra. And he also became the high priest. Ezra was both the head of the Sanhedrin and also the high priest. Okay? So at the time of the Persian period, the Sanhedrin was like a government, okay? They made all the decisions of the land and also they ran the temple. And this is why it's so important, the high priesthood. Yeah? And when the Hellenists came in, they said, no way, Jose. We are the governors now. We are going to decide who's going to be the high priest, not the Jews. Yeah? And at the highest bidding. So you can actually see how the high priesthood became corrupt during the Hellenistic period. Then the Maccabees or the Hasmoneans kick out the Hellenists. The Maccabees actually became kings and high priests at the same time. And the people were not so happy about the Maccabees. They were happy that they were Jews, okay? But not so happy that both the kingship and the high priesthood was in the hands of one person, okay? And then when the Romans came in, the issue with the high priesthood, it became even worse. The Romans also took control of the high priesthood of the Sadducees. They had to be pro-Roman. They brought in idolatry, Roman idolatry into the temple, okay? Also for the highest bidding. While the Hellenists were changing the high priest every 3, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, something like that, the Romans were changing the high priest every single year. And this is why in the New Testament, you actually read that Caiaphas was the high priest that year. Yeah? Because the Romans were changing the high priest every single year. And even more corrupt. This is, and for the highest bidding. That means that the priest and the high priest, they need to have money to be able to pay the Romans. Okay? And this is why they were selling stuff in the temple. This is why Yeshua came into the temple and turned all the tables over. Why did he do that? Because he knew the corruption that was going on. Yeah? He knew that the priest and the high priest need to collect money to pay the Romans to actually be in that job. Yeah? And Yeshua said, this house is a house of prayer for all nations. Yeah? He was actually very annoyed about this. Okay? Did I answer the question? Yes.
Very good, very good. Okay, I'm going to actually combine two questions specifically about Esther. So the first question is, what is the impact of the book of Esther being discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and how could people get access to that and other titles that are not in the modern day Bible? Two questions, I just merged them.
Okay, so how do you get the books that are not in the Bible? It's in the Apocrypha, the Jewish Apocrypha. So you need to go to a place to actually get the Jewish Apocrypha. But Esther is in the Bible. Esther definitely is in the Bible, okay? Today's Bible. And the book of Esther is fascinating. And I did a whole study. I actually have my own YouTube channel, guys. And if you'd like to join, you're most welcome to join. There are studies similar to this. Most of the studies are in Spanish, but I have 42 different videos in English. And one of them is called Megillat Esther. Megillat Esther. And believe you me, it's fascinating. The book of Esther is one of the most fascinating books on the face of the earth, and it's actually a prophecy of the Holocaust, what was going to happen to the Jewish people. If you have not heard this, I suggest go and see the video. I give you all the references in, like you have here, all the references in PowerPoints. You can actually go and search it yourself, okay? It's called Megillat Esther. Just put Sonia Waters Esther, okay? And this study, Megillat Esther, will come up. Okay, yeah. Another question?
Okay. Yeah, I've got one over here, Sonia.
Yeah, where are you? Yes.
On your right side.
Yeah.
And we'll send the YouTube link and the email that people are going to get after as well for your channel.
Okay, sure.
Right. Okay, so were there any surprises found when translating the Dead Sea Scrolls and comparing to what was written in the Bible? Any differences, any surprises, any changes?
So the difference is the spelling, okay? Spelling is one of the issues. In 3 different, it's fascinating because in the Hebrew Bible, they're copying it exactly the same way even today, like it was 2,000 years ago, and we have the same mistakes. So let me tell you one of them, okay? In Hebrew, we have a middle M and an end M. They're two different letters, a middle M and an end M. In 3 different times in the whole Bible, you have the middle M at the end. And it's been passing on this mistake for thousands of years. And even in the Hebrew Bible of today, we have the same thing. Unbelievable, that's what they found, yeah? But there's no differences. It's the same book. It's the same writing even of Hebrew of today, okay? And this is actually so incredible, yeah? When we actually pass something from one generation to another, if it is actually verbal, it's like a broken phone. Do you have the broken phone? Do you have this? Yeah? But this is actually written, and the Jewish people have done such an accurate job. They would not allow themselves to make mistakes. And this is, considered by the Jewish people and the rest of Christian community as the Word of God. Yeah, so there's a different thing altogether, right? Can you see that? Okay. Any other questions? No?
Yes, no, there are more. Sorry. There's so many that we're trying to read through because we only have a few more minutes. So if we don't answer your question, we'll try to get it answered later. There's a lot coming through.
Yeah, I've got one.
Yeah.
It says, what time period, as it relates to the Old and New Testament, were the Hellenists causing havoc? Was this between the end of the Old Testament and New?
So it was actually prophesied in the book of Daniel. And remember that Daniel was taken to Babylon with Jerusalem. When Jerusalem went, Daniel was actually a very young man and was taken to Babylon. This is 586 BC, okay? It's fascinating that Daniel prophesied the conquest of Alexander the Great, and he also said that the Jewish people were going to be delivered from it, okay? And that happened with the Maccabees. And then what was the question again? Sorry?
Just, was this between the end of the Old Testament and New?
Yes, and the beginning of the New, yes. So you have kind of a gap between, Ezra, you have Amos, you have other prophets, how do you say, small prophets or minor prophets, okay? And then the start of the New Testament is about 200 years. Yeah.